Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey, welcome back to the Better Sex Podcast. This is Jessa, and thank you for tuning in. So glad you're here. Every week, I have these fascinating conversations with people, and sometimes they're people that I seek out and reach out to, or people I already know. And sometimes, like today, there are people that reach out to me who have something to offer around, some topic related to sex. And some of them are pretty surprising. Like, it wouldn't have occurred to me to talk about this or to talk to this person. Those are some of the most interesting interviews that I have. This is one of those. O'Day Dixon reached out to me because she is a dancer. She's been a nurse. And she is seriously into the science and the thought behind flow state, which, it came out of research into people that are highly successful and thriving, and they have some things in common. They get into the state of flow. And as she describes in the interview, it is something that is sort of self-rewarding. Like, it feels so good to get in a flow state. You're not aware of time. You're not aware of yourself. You're certainly not aware of worry. You're in a different brain state, and you're at peak performance. And this overlaps a little bit with sex. Not that we have to be peak performing in sex, or that we're looking for some experience that's, mystical or unachievable or something like that. But the parts of flow that we could relate to about not being self-conscious and not about being present in the moment, not really aware of time, the place we can get to really is accessible to all of us. And so she's here talking about using dance specifically to access flow state. She talks about her own experience, but also how this is accessible for everybody. I hope you enjoy it. And before we start the show today, it is sponsored by Intimacy with Ease. It's a method to help otherwise happy couples achieve a sex life that is easy and fun for both of them, so that you can actually just enjoy your sex life with zero stress. For more information, if you want to watch a brief little training video that's available, all of that, go to intimacywithease.com. O'Day, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is a new one. I mean, I get so many different kinds of topics and so many different guests, but this is fascinating, this whole idea of dancing related to sex. And,
absolutely.
And it's funny because I just worked with clients who took a dancing lesson and had this huge experience around their relationship based on that. So I know it's a powerful thing.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So would you start by just, go back a little bit, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and how you started dancing and, why the passion around this?
Okay. So, like Jessa just introduced me, my name is O'Day Dixon, and I have been dancing quite a while since I was a little girl, around the age of 5 or 6, growing up in rural West Africa. And in our little village, dance was pretty much about the only thing we had. There were definitely no computers. There were no TVs even. So the only way we entertained ourselves we formed little groups, and we would gather together in somebody's compound, and we would just practice and dance. And this usually would lead to the holiday period, where we would perform along the streets. And it's kind of like 12 Days of Christmas performance. Like, we didn't necessarily nail it down, but it was around the holiday period, and we would just dance around that time, and we would dance along the streets. People would stop to watch us. It kind of reminds me of those parades you see at Disney land, when you go there and they like parade through the streets. It was kind of sort of like that. We would just make several stops at different points. We'll put out our show, and then we'll keep it moving. So yeah, so that's kind of where it dates back to. And that was kind of like a highlight of my life growing up.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did you become aware of like a state of flow? Like, because your dancing is just a little girl, when did you start to realize there's some deeper experience going on?
So while all that was going on, this is kind of like, okay, we did this for like entertainment, fun and everything. However, dance was very almost like everywhere. Church, it was a lot of dancing. And I was in our church had like a choir, a children's section, and I was in the children's choir. So we did performances and dances. So it was there. It was always there. So, however, there was this movement that had just started in that church community where I was, and it was like an evangelical group where we would go out, and it was a dance ministry. So we would hold these evangelical crusades where the mission of that group was to like go out and spread the word, but really it was dancing and preaching like wrapped together. So as we are doing this, we would go out as a group. It was my entire family and this group as an association. We would go out into like villages, and we're spending like 2-3 days, and we're doing this thing, just dancing and doing this fellowship. And it was so phenomenal that we didn't even leave this spot, but people would just come to us. So the mission of that group was, hey, spread the word and convert people to like Christianity, which was a religion that was just picking up at that time. So people would just come in droves. They were just mesmerized by the way we would put up these performances that, by the way, we didn't practice them. It was just like improv.
Okay.
And it was just this magical way of, we would dance and somebody would make a move and you just look to that brother over there and you just pick it up, and it was just so magnificent. People would come around us and they just like wanted to be amongst us. So later on, I couldn't quite put my hand on it, but that was when I started realizing something happens when we are in that environment. It was a little kind of mystical, couldn't explain it exactly. It was later on though when I like got introduced into the field of flow, and I was actually studying it as a subject. One of the exercises was go back to like a childhood, a time when you experience these things. And for me, it was immediate because I could just relate. It was the sense of, they call it when you become one with the activity, the dance, the music, the environment, you all become one. There is no separation. It was a oneness of it was an experience that you couldn't explain, where you become one with everything. It was just magical. So that's where I started first. That was the first time I experienced flow, and I would experience it in that environment. But then when I learned later on about flow, which we will talk about a little bit more, as I continue to learn about the topic, I realized that it showed up at places where, it has evolved from just mystical or spiritual to all phases of life. But at the same time, it's where, at that point where you are performing at your optimal and it's free flowing. And that's why the term flow was coined, because it's just so flowy. You are not it's a very, very satisfied state of being where you are just performing at your best,
Yeah, not overthinking or worrying or
Exactly.
analyzing. Yeah. So,
Exactly.
so when I listen to you talk about this, and of course I'm thinking about sex and my clients and thinking, I don't want to make goals or aspirations that people feel like they can't live up to, but it seems like
Right.
some state of flow around sex where you can just be in the moment, you're reacting to what you feel.
Well,
With.
so absolutely. So I would let me share this quote with you so that your audience kind of understand how does dance even get into this. I'm sure you will, will lead on to it. But this quote here by Ned Hallowell, who is a Harvard psychologist and an expert. He is the leading expert in ADHD and that field, but he approaches it with flow, treatment and everything. He researches flow and develop concepts and treatments around it. And this is what he said. He said, flow naturally catapults you to a level you are not naturally in. Flow naturally catapults a weakling into a muscleman, a sketcher into an artist, a dancer into a ballerina, an ordinary person into an extraordinary person. Everything you do better in flow, from baking chocolate cake to planning a vacation to solving a difficult equation to making love. Everything you do better in flow. And then he goes on to say, flow is the doorway to the more most of us seek. Rather than telling ourselves to get used to it, that's all there is. Instead, learn how to enter into flow. There you will find in manageable doses all the more you need. I thought that was powerful for us to share here, for the audience to know that the more that we're seeking in many aspects of life, we can get it easily if we just learn the mechanism of how to get there, one of which is flow. It's accessible to all of us. Yeah.
So you do think it's accessible. It doesn't seem like this aspirational thing that people can only sort of, see from the ground or something. You think people can learn to get into flow?
No. So one thing that has happened over so many years, and I come from the back end of just like looking the research. Like I'm very, very interested in the research, the studies of it. So it's not just speculation, right? So one of the ways to look at this is to like go back, and I like how Stephen Kotler, he's one of the leading experts and researcher of flows, and what he did was kind of like take us back into, like a chronological evolution of what this phenomenon is, which way back when, 150 years ago, it used to be just like a mystical experience reserved for the spiritual and religious realm alone, and that was how it was taught to be, that flow was just reserved for that body of work. But then more and more philosophers and came up to like disprove that later. It was Abraham Maslow that came back later, and what he did, Abraham Maslow is a phenomenal in the world of psychology. But what he was interested in knowing what people who are at their top, at their peak, people who excel at any field, he wanted to study what was going on with them, successful people, and that's what he wanted to know. All of the successful people at that time. So he researched them. He talked to them. He tried to understand what is going on. Each and every one of them is describing this thing that was supposedly just reserved for mystical spiritual experiences. And then come to find out that all these people that he's talking to, every last one of them was an atheist. They were not
right. So
spiritual.
there's a secular flow,
Exactly.
right? Like
So,
this is yeah.
so okay. This is not just for religion or spiritual. No, this is accessible to everybody. This is the same
Right.
thing that we are looking at here. So that kind of like blew the door wide open. That okay, this phenomena, which is flow, which is at that time was referred to as peak performance or peak experiences, is not really accessible to everybody, and it is available to all of us if we knew how to get it and how to get into the state. So that was kind of like a little eye-opening to say, well, you don't necessarily, this is not just for religion or for spiritual purposes, it's available to all of us. And there have been studies of, across the board, from arts, science, business, and all fields, from Olympic gold medalists, all across the board, people who are performing at their peak because of the flow experience that they are having.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So the point is, yes, it is for every one of us in every situation, including our sex life, if that's where we are trying to, improve our lives and have that experience there. Mm-hmm.
All right. So talk to me about the overlap here with dance, because you obviously grew up experiencing flow in this dance tradition and experiences that you had. Is this something you recommend across the board? Like, what is it about dance that might help people discover flow?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, dance was very, very present in my earlier life. But then when I came to the US, for a long time, I wasn't dancing regularly beyond just like occasional events. I wasn't quite doing it as regularly as I was. I was really caught up in the everyday, running around and just living life on a very hyper side of, So something happened. I had a school. I was running in a vocational school where I would train and certify healthcare professionals, and it was quite hectic. I was just going, and then very suddenly, my sister died in Africa, and it was very sudden. She wasn't sick. She just suffered a massive heart attack, and she just dropped. I spoke to her like 3 days prior. She was supposed to come over to visit with us, and we were in that process, and boom, she was gone.
Oh, wow.
It was such a devastating time for me, and went home for her funeral, had time to spend time with family and everything. And when I came back, I was beginning to question like the whole way I was living life on the go. I wasn't happy after all, because what happened was I left bedside nursing to start my school in search of freedom, to live a more relaxed life, but apparently that's not what I'm getting, and I'm still going at it. And I was just like, oh my God, my sister just died. And it was about a month or two after I came back from my sister's funeral. I was teaching a class one evening. We were practicing how to do blood pressure, and I was teaching the students. So this one evening, one of them didn't have a partner, so I decided to be a partner with one of them. She checks my blood pressure. It was sky high.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't believe. I'm like, oh, what is, I'm like, no, I was in denial. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it must be the student, right?
Yeah, I said, yeah, you don't know what you're doing. Come on, do it again. That's not what I taught you. And of course, I'm blaming everybody else. We did that thing like 3 times, switched students, switched equipment, sky high.
Wow.
And I was like, what in the world? So confirmed that I was hypertensive a few days later with my doctor, and it was a devastating blow. I just buried my sister who dropped dead from a massive heart attack from actually untreated high blood pressure.
Oh,
And it
gosh.
was like, whoa. You know, my babies were very, very little. And I was like, I had to stop and think of what to do,
Yeah.
make some changes immediately. Long story short, though, I started dancing again because I wasn't active at the time. I made so many changes, of course, my diet and physical activity. So dance was what I took up. I was doing dance classes, but the schedule getting to the classes was too hectic. I decided I will dance at home. Like, I can dance. I don't need to, stress myself trying to get to those dance classes. They were amazing, but I just wasn't getting there efficiently. So I'm like, okay, I'll just start dancing at home. So I started dancing at home. And it was all of a sudden this same experience that I used to have way back when, that I told you about when I belonged to that evangelical group. It would just be like something transcendent. My body, it would just take over me, and I'm just going and going. I kind of started experiencing it again. And that was right around the time I had stumbled into flow science, and I started learning about it. And there came the connection. I was dancing. I was feeling a sense of self, a sense of relaxation, and it was absolutely transforming.
Hey, it's Jessa. I'm just taking a little break to invite you to my free monthly webinars that I do on a variety of topics that always include an open Q&A session with me at the end. I'm doing these monthly. If you want to hear about them, be invited so you can register. Make sure you join my mailing list. You can go to bettersexpodcast.com/list.
By the way, 11 months after I started making all these changes, by the way, I was taking off blood pressure medicine. My blood pressure was not only controlled, it was getting too low. And they took me off blood pressure medicine. The doctor was like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm dancing a lot. And he's like, okay, well, keep going. So besides that, everything was changing. My physical appearance was changing. We were looking to move to Florida at the time because my husband was nearing his retirement, and we knew we were going to come to Florida, and we were searching. So we had about 2 weeks to visit a part of Florida that we were looking at. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to do some beachside photos while we're in Florida, because we live in Atlanta. Beaches are like 4 hours away.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, while we're in Florida, I might as well do some photos by the beach. And then I looked at myself, though. I was like, okay, that is not a bikini beach body. You got to do something. So then I really, really started dancing very, very regularly. And the physical results were outstanding, Jessa. You would not believe it. For the first time, I had abs. Like, my husband is literally watching me dance one day, and he goes, "Sweet pea, you got abs." And I'm like, I see.
Is there anything? I'm thinking that some of this would be related to sort of any form of exercise or fitness.
Yes,
right? Some of the benefits. It wouldn't have
yes.
to be specifically.
Right. So that's exactly it. So this type of dance that I was doing, called Makosa, is very, it's a type of belly dance, but think about belly dancing, but the emphasis is, let's just say, 3 to 5x more of the normal belly dancing that you see. So Makosa is a very popular dance around West Africa, and it's when they call it wind. It's also wind, or in the Caribbean, it's called wind. You are winding your waist, and a core exercise like no other. But the thing is, you are having fun. You don't even feel like you're not doing crunches or anything that makes you like, oh, I don't want to do this. This is fun. Like you are 20 minutes in and you don't even feel like you've done anything, you know? So yes, is the benefit of that. But to come to where it relates to the sex part of it is that I realized that between me and Julius, it was phenomenal. That was yet another benefit. It was just a lot more easier for us. It was just a thing of, it was just a transformational. And what I came to learn, the more I learned about flow, was the fact that when we are moving our bodies, we are triggering the neural pathway in our brain. So our brain has a way of releasing neurochemicals indigenously. So neurochemicals are triggered in our bodies when we move. First of all, nitric oxide, which is a gas. It's a gas that we don't even realize, but it's indigenously released, and what it does is it flushes out stress hormones like cortisol and norepinephrine. It flushes it out of your system, and then on the other end, it triggers the release of these feel-good neurochemicals like dopamine and oxytocin and all those things that really spark these joyful and loving feeling inside of you. Not only feel good, but also enhance your performance.
Right. These are sort of flow chemicals, right? These are part of what you're experiencing.
Yes, exactly. They call it dose. Some people, experts just call it dose for people to remember. So D for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and noradrenaline. Those are some of the common ones that are triggered internally. And what happens is that the brain has the perfect way to cocktail these drugs inside our bodies that there is no way we can do that in real life. So most of these indigenous drugs, there are real life drugs, morphine and all those things in real life that mimic the exact feelings that we can get. But the thing is that they are cocktailed perfectly by the brain. There is no way we can replicate that.
Right.
So these drugs, the way we are feeling are triggered by just moving our bodies a certain way. And it's not just every type of practice that can give you this type of feeling, So there are the way the brain talk to us, if you want to look into the brain, the way researchers look into the brain, they want to know where, so the neuroanatomy, where exactly in the brain is this information taking place and what pathway, so the network, where is it connecting to, and then the electrical charge, what kind of electrical charge is being released and what kind of chemicals is being released. So those are some things that are happening when you are moving your body in a certain way with dance. And with dance, these are the types of chemicals that are triggered in our body. First of all, you calm down by just flushing out those stress hormones and then release these neurochemicals that elevate the way you feel, so that when you get into the activity you want to do, it's flowy, it's not stressful, it's enjoyable, And then something else you also have to pay attention to, which I'm also mostly interested in, is so where in the brain is this action taking place? So that's the neuroanatomy. So in order for you to dance, and if you are really, really paying attention, and what the researchers have done is they compare different scenarios where flow can be taking place. So they look at meditation, they look at things like surfing, they look at runner's high, these things that really spark flow and what exactly is going on in the brain. Well, when it's a mindful activity, something like, say, meditation. In meditation, I think you are letting go of your feelings. You want to control your feelings or something like that. So certain parts of the brain are not going to be activated. You're gonna just go through that feeling. Well, when it's something active like dance, and you have to pay attention to, let's say you are making a certain move and you really want to dance and pay attention, the activity that you are doing, such as dance, is going to draw your attention to the now. So they call it focusing in the now.
Yeah.
The ability to be in the present, where you are using a lot of your senses, you got to pay attention through it. So it's not like rumination or daydreaming.
Right.
This is something that, okay, I really have to pay attention. I really got to go through this process. So you are forced to focus. When you are doing this, there is a part of your brain that kind of shuts down, because the brain is known to conserve energy. It works best. It wants to conserve energy, so that it pays attention to what's happening right now. And there's something they call transient hypofrontality, which is when you at this moment, so transient, your prefrontal cortex, which is the frontality, is hypo, so it's dialed back down so that you can pay attention. So that's important to note, because you can benefit from an activity like, let's say, meditation on one side, but it's important to also balance it with an activity that really, really forces you to be active.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm trying to say, that there is a balance, and both of them are really beneficial, and why you should really emphasize on doing something like that will spark these types of activities in the brain, as well as the chemicals that really can enhance our sex life later.
Right. Well, the other thing that strikes me about dance is, if you are dancing with a partner, whether it's a particular type of dance that you do with a partner, or if you're just paying attention to each other, there's a tuning in and an awareness to each other that I would imagine would increase flow.
I can
kind of between you, right?
Oh, yes. I can tell you, it sounds like TMI, but my husband can just watch me dance sometimes, or even when we're not dancing together, he can just watch me dance. I love to dance, so it doesn't bother me at all, but he can just, he that's something that's
right.
Definitely a thing.
So tell me, to sort of wrap up, right? What would you say to people? Because I'm sure listeners are thinking this. I can't dance. Dance is somehow not for me, right? I've got two left feet, whatever it is.
I know. So for that, I will say that the joy of dance. Actually, first of all, I know I mentioned earlier about the how one of the Stephen Kotler gave us a chronology of how this whole flow thing evolved. Well, one of the most researched flow godfathers, the way he puts it is that flow is intrinsically motivating, which means when you are doing the thing, the action, the flow action, it is not for, you are not calculating, you're not being calculative, okay, I'm doing this so that I can get rewarded with this. No, you are just doing it for the sake of doing it. So you're going to enjoy the activity regardless. So for the listeners, I'm saying, dance, don't worry about it. It's not competition. It's not anything that you are being judged on. This is just you just dancing for the sake of dancing. So I use I just tell people, let loose, go into it, enjoy yourself, no self-critic. And that's actually one of the benefits of transient hypofrontality, because when your prefrontal cortex is dialed back, you can no longer calculate your sense of self, which is a good thing at this time because you're not being judgmental, you're not judging yourself, you're not criticizing yourself, because we are very perfect at like very self-critic, right? We criticize ourselves. Oh, I can do this, I can do that. Well, one of the benefits of dancing or doing an activity like that is that part of the brain where sense of self is calculated is dialed back a great deal. So you are not that's the same area where time is calculated. So you're not too aware of time. You're not so self-conscious. Those things are dialed back so that you just go through the motion, and the more you do it, and it's crazy. The more the better you get. It's just like any other thing, directedness. If you get into it, the more you do it, the better and better you become at it. So great. I would say, tell them, go, just put on the music, whatever it is, like, and go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So where can people get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so the followers, they can get in touch with me on, social media, like Ode Dixon on Facebook and Ode Dixon 1 on Instagram. Those are the two platforms where I'm really active. And,
okay.
And that's where I share up and coming things that I'm working on.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. A total different direction for me on the podcast, and I think it's great. So
I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome.
All right. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.